All right, so today we're jumping into a really provocative article from a counterculture website called luchaclick.com. It lays out this intense, high stakes showdown between the White House and a major American city, and let me tell you, it brings up some massive questions about presidential power versus states' rights. Let's get right into it.
Wow, talk about an opening line, right? The article just drops you right in with this. It immediately frames the whole situation not as, some simple political spat, but as a full-on battleground. It's a really powerful way to set the stakes incredibly high from the get-go.
So here's our game plan for breaking this all down. First, we're going to get to know the source, LuchaClick itself. Then we'll dive headfirst into the article's main argument, take a look at the legal case it tries to make, and then wrap up with its pretty powerful call to action.
Okay, first up, welcome to LuchaClick. To really understand any piece of writing, you've got to understand where it's coming from. So let's spend a minute exploring the pretty unique world of this website.
This is the tagline right from their site, and you can see right away it's a lot. You've got mutual aid and anti-fascism sitting right next to gaming, peace, and love. It's a fascinating mix, and it tells you immediately that this site is coming from a very specific and very activist-driven point of view.
And that blend isn't just in their tagline. I mean, look at the kind of stuff they cover. You could be reading about lucha libre wrestling 1 minute, and then click over to a deep dive on political activism or social justice commentary the next. It's pretty clear they're speaking to an audience that doesn't really see a line between pop culture and political action.
All right, so with that context in mind, let's turn to the article itself. It's titled Sovereignty Under Siege, and it paints a picture of what it considers a major constitutional flashpoint. So the whole piece is built around this one pretty explosive hypothetical scenario. Imagine the president sending the Texas National Guard into Chicago. But here's the absolute key, without anyone in Chicago or Illinois actually asking for them. And that detail, that lack of local consent, is what the article argues turns this from just a bold political move into a potential constitutional crisis.
This really lays out the fundamental conflict, right? It's a classic tug of war. On one side, you have the idea of state authority, a state's right to control its own local law enforcement and make its own decisions about safety. And on the other side, you've got this idea of a federal intervention that just steamrolls right over local governance. That's the core tension the article is digging into. And the author, who goes by the name Dante Oblivion, really doesn't mince words. They're not just saying, oh, this is a bad idea. They're calling it a deeply troubling pattern of authoritarian impulses. The argument is that this isn't just a one-off event, but a symptom of a much bigger, more dangerous trend.
And then they really crank it up a notch. The article goes on to claim this reveals a profoundly fascist approach to governance. Now, that's a very strong word, isn't it? By using a term like that, the author is sending a clear signal. They're basically saying, hey, everyone, wake up. This isn't just politics as usual. We're talking about a fundamental threat to democracy itself. So if you're going to make these huge claims, you have to back them up, right? This is where the article pivots. It shifts away from the strong rhetoric and tries to build a solid constitutional argument, even bringing in a legal expert. And the entire legal case hangs on this one core concept, state sovereignty. So what is that? Well, to put it simply, it's the idea baked right into the Constitution that says states have their own rights. The federal government can't just swoop in and order a state's law enforcement around. And to give this argument some real legal muscle, the article brings in an expert voice, Paul Anthony Galler, a law professor from Northwestern University. It's a classic move to lend authority to your claims, right? Bring in the professor. And Professor Galler's take, at least according to this article, is pretty blunt. Fundamentally, there is no legal basis for the president's aggressive tactics. See, it's not wishy-washy at all. It's a direct, clear-cut legal opinion that basically says, nope, this doesn't fly. Okay, so we've heard the problem, we've heard the legal argument. So, what's next? This is where the article completely shifts gears. It stops just analyzing the problem and starts trying to organize a solution. It's moving from analysis to activism. And a huge part of this call to action is the argument that this Chicago scenario isn't happening in a vacuum. The article goes out of its way to connect the dots, linking this issue to immigration reform debates, movements like Fuck ICE, and even international efforts like Free Palestine. The message is pretty clear. It's all part of the same larger fight. And they don't just say, go do something. They actually give their readers a 4-step playbook for action.
And it's really practical stuff. It starts with educating yourself on your rights, then moves to organizing in your community, supporting legal fights, and finally contacting your representatives. It's a pretty clear roadmap.
And to show that this isn't just some theoretical plan, the article points to things it says are already happening. Real-world examples of resistance, like lawsuits being filed and people creating protective barriers at immigration facilities. It's basically their way of saying, see, people are already fighting back. You can join them. And it all builds to this one final, powerful takeaway. Resistance is not just possible, it is imperative. Notice the language here. It's not a suggestion anymore. The article frames resistance as imperative, an essential, almost moral civic duty.
So that's where the article leaves us. It makes this huge claim that taking a stand is imperative. And that really leaves us all with a big question to chew on, doesn't it? It makes you think, what really is the role of an individual citizen in a democracy? What does that responsibility actually look like in our day-to-day lives? It's a heavy thought to end on for sure. Let us know what you think.